We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to join us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Gary.
Here.
Grinberg.
Here.
Pepcorn.
Here.
Strand.
Here.
Mahoney.
Here. We're partially virtual and partially in person, so it's a different meeting for us. Inspection. Sam's Club has donated almost 100 canisters of Clorox wipes to the city to assist in disinfecting common areas in City Hall. We appreciate their generosity. Library. As part of the City of Fargo's reopening Fargo Phase 1 plan, the Fargo Public Library continues to offer no-contact curbside pickup services at all 3 locations. Library patrons can log in at fargolibrary.org or call the circulation department to request items. Even though the library buildings are closed to in-person visits, Fargo Public Library is still open online with lots of options for people to read, listen, and learn. The library is planning for all ages summer reading program titled Imagine Your Story. This year will include online options for readers. While this will be a bit different from previous years, the program will still provide opportunities for reading for all ages, as well as opportunities to win prizes. In his weekly message, Chief Todd, who skipped the open meeting here today, is virtual for us, recounted that when he went on a call recently for a man with an AR-15 who pointed it at all and threatened another person. He and others arrived at the scene with information that the suspect had headed out into a grassy field. So they geared up with helmets, vests, and rifles and made their way through the field to try to secure the area. The chief said he usually gets to hear and read about these incidents afterwards. However, he was grateful this day would be different. He said he came up through the department and over the last 32 plus years has been involved in many similar incidents. However, no matter how many incidents an officer goes through, every one of them is a little different and always potentially dangerous. He said the police officers are adrenaline junkies to a certain extent, and they live for the excitement these types of calls generate, which is why they run towards the danger instead of away from it. The weight of the plate vest, the rifle sling chafing on his neck, the helmet giving him a headache, and his feet aching were all familiar feelings. He said it was a good reminder of what officers go through as types of calls continue to come in, continue to increase. In many respects, he said it was also a reminder for being an officer is the best job he ever had. As many of you heard last week, Police Chief Dave Todd is retiring at the end of July. He joined the police force in 1987 and has been chief of the department since 2014. During his tenure as chief, he worked to hire more officers and establish competitive wages. He helped create new centralized police headquarters, and he helped found the Fargo Police Academy. Can we offer, please, the chief a round of applause? Chief Todd, thanks for your years of service, and if you would have kept in shape, your feet wouldn't have hurt. No. Nationwide search for his replacement has already begun. As a regional leader in North Dakota's largest community, this is a critical position for our metro area and our state. Fargo is committed to hiring a candidate with intelligence, compassion, strategic vision, and leadership qualities this position requires to protect and serve our residents and visitors. Our next chief will continue to be the reflection of the passion and the determination that has been a trademark of the Fargo Police Department since its inception. Thank you, Chief, for your years of service, and we're looking forward to the new guy. You'll help us with that selection. Those in attendance at our meetings will likely notice we recently completed the final installation of the wall coverings at the Commissioner Chambers. These panels, created by a local artist and Fargo native Andrew David Stark, are entitled Over the Flowing Acres and Across the Great Expanse. They were always part of the City Hall building project and one of the few remaining aspects left to finish. It took many months of work by Andrew while he was also teaching at NDSU to complete these panels. We're glad to see them hung and ready for the public to enjoy for decades to come. Also brightens up the chamber a bit. Finally, earlier today, a B-52 bomber assigned to the Minot Air Force Base flew over Sanford Health Medical Center in Fargo. The flyover, known as Air Force Salute, honors frontline responders and expresses Minot Air Force Base and the Air Force gratitude for all the medical and healthcare professionals, essential employees, and volunteers in fight against COVID-19. The bomber also conducted flyovers of medical facilities today in Bismarck, Grand Forks, and Minot. Flyovers are fully functional training missions designed to maintain readiness. They are conducted at no additional cost to the taxpayer, and they are incorporated into existing flying schedules. We have a video of this. Makes your drone look a little small, Tony, huh?
I was going to say next time it should be an MQ-9. We could do that.
Okay, thank you. We're now going to go to the agenda, and some people are curious why the firearms issue is not in this agenda item, and Eric Johnson is looking into state law on this particular aspect, so it won't be on our agenda at this time. Is there a motion to approve the order of agenda?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the May 4th, 2020 regular meeting?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Finally, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 25?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded, Strand and Garrick. Roll call, please.
Strand.
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. We'll go to the regular agenda at this time. We have a presentation by Gate City involving the Neighborhood Preservation or Revitalization Initiative. Nicole Crutchfield to explain.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners, and tonight we'd like to announce the 2020 NRI Neighborhood Revitalization Initiative program funding from Gate City Bank. We're doing this virtually. Gate City, I believe, is on the call if you're here to answer any questions, and they might have a few things they want to say. As you know, this is an important program for our community. Rates are as low as 2.5% APR. It's for 10-year or 15-year options, and ranging in $10,000 to $75,000. And so we do know this year, at the end of last year and this year, we are narrowing that focus. It used to be citywide, and we've brought it back to the core neighborhood areas and on the coordination with Gate City Bank. And so usually we have the big check and the photo and all that, but we don't have that today, but we still want to enroll this program. Here to answer any questions.
And who do we have from Gate City?
Barb.
Barb, you want to say a few words? Then we can see you on the big screen.
Sure. I didn't know if I was unmuted yet. Thank you for having Gate City Bank as part of your meeting today. We're really excited about the Neighborhood Revitalization Initiative Program, NRI. A cornerstone of Gate City's bank mission is to provide a better way of life for our customers and our communities. And the NRI program offered by Gate City Bank accomplishes that goal by encouraging the homeowners in different areas to preserve their homes and to add to the long-term value and life of their property and their neighborhood. We've been doing this since 2003, and we've made over $12 million available in low-interest loans for over 350 properties in Fargo's neighborhoods, saving borrowers over $1 million in interest. We did shorten the scope last year, and we added a few more neighborhoods this year. So we're really excited to have the opportunity to provide an additional $2 million to the city of Fargo for the NRI program to continue this work in Fargo.
Thank you very much. I know a lot of people, a lot of people with COVID do house projects now, so this would be a great thing to get done. Again, we thank you for your partnership with the city of Fargo, and Nicole loves giving that money away, right? Thank you. Next item is we're going to have Chief Dirksen present the 2019 Fire Department Annual Report. Getting less busy all the time, huh?
No, Mayor, regretfully, we're not. I wish I could come up here and report that. Ever since I've got here 9 years ago, I think we've been reporting increases, as you'll see here in the presentation. Again, thank you for the honor it is for me to serve as the fire chief for the city of Fargo and the trust that you place in me to lead our wonderful fire department. We have outstanding employees that work for us, and they do such a great job serving our community each and every day. And I wanted to come earlier to do this report, but this little bug that's running around has kind of slowed us down a little bit, and we finally were able to put the report together here and do this for you. So. As you can see from our annual response data from 2009 to today, we're up nearly 7,000 responses a year over the last 11 years or so. So we continue to grow as our community stretches out and we have more and more people. We have more people call 911, and the complexity of the things that we have to deal with on a daily basis continues to grow, but our folks are really up to the challenge and learning different things, and a couple of things that I'll highlight later in the report will tell you what we're up to. You can see our responses by our fire stations. We don't have 9 fire stations. Don't worry about that. I didn't secretly build 2. We do have 7, but for the purposes of planning, we've divided the city into 9 planning zones. So in the future, we're looking at things that we should in the future have fire stations in 8 and 9 at some point, and Station 8 is getting way closer as we move forward here. But you can see downtown, our fire station number 1 continues to be the busiest station in town with 3,400 responses last year just out of that station area alone. That doesn't mean engine 1 went on all of those responses. Some of the other engines had to fill in because down there their reliability rate is probably right at about 12%. They're busy a significant part of the time, so about 12% of the time they're not available for a call, and that requires another engine to come in and respond downtown. And there's oftentimes that there's multiple calls in the downtown area at the same time. So the way we've set up the city and the way the previous fire chiefs have built things around the city is the fire stations are close enough towards the downtown to help respond into some of that territory. For the first time, we have a second fire station that has had over 2,000 responses. The Station 5 in West Acres just bumped up over 2,000 responses last year. There's a significant number of apartments there, but along with West Acres Mall, the interstates, and the traffic that goes around there, that has been increasing, and they've been on a steady increase for the last number of years, moving up that way. Just to note that what's depicted as Station 8, that would be an area that what we've designed in the planning zone. That's basically a rough area from 40th Avenue South all the way to the borders of the city, and then just on the east side of Interstate 29 and all the way to the southern borders of the city. So that's an area that approximately 12,000 residents in the city of Fargo live there. There's approximately 2,700 homes there with a number of apartments and getting more and more commercial businesses. And then just for your reference, the Station 9 area is better known as Deer Creek. And that was an area that was that last year with West Fargo, we entered into an automatic aid agreement when we had the construction on 52nd Avenue, and West Fargo was having construction on Cheyenne. So some of these calls that were responded to in this area were responded to by West Fargo Fire Department as well as Fargo firefighters, because we were just trying to serve the citizens the best we could. So simultaneous dispatches. And our citizens were sometimes served by West Fargo units, and sometimes we served the West Fargo folks as well by doing some responses down by Cheyenne and 32nd and so on. You can just see here's a map of the city, and that's just kind of reflecting that Planning Zone 9 is the green area on the bottom there, and Planning Zone 8 is the kind of yellow tannish area there on the bottom right. Just a heat map of where we respond. You can see the core of Fargo is kind of a big area there. And then also right across from the Northport Hornbachers and I shouldn't have used the name because it just went out of my mind. But another apartment building on North Broadway, right across from Northport Hornbachers, is an area where we see a significant number of calls. But in the middle there, right here, this green blob is kind of that Station 5 West Acres area that's starting to see more and more responses. What kind of calls do we go on? The National Fire Incident Reporting System has 9 different categories that we categorize our responses in. Obviously, the first one is fires, so we had 221 fire responses in the city of Fargo last year. Overpressure, that can be a multitude of different things. It can be steam, it can be gasoline, it could be whatever, propane, multiple things. 6,300, almost 6,400 emergency medical calls within the city last year. We have a tiered response system with FM ambulance where we respond because of our locations throughout the city. Usually we're there first most of the time. And then we provide that initial stabilization of a patient, maybe begin CPR or taking care of a trauma, or just holding somebody's hand until they can get transported to the hospital. They may need that ride. So doing those type of things, that's about just close to 60% of our responses are on the emergency medical side each and every year. Hazardous conditions, that can vary from arcing wires to gas leaks, those kind of things. Service calls, we may get called out to assist in a variety of different things. We assist the police quite often. We do a lot of working together with them. We end up on a lot of police matters. Good intent calls, people will call us because they smell something and they don't know who else to send, so we go and we check it out, and a lot of times we really don't find anything, but it's somebody's calling in, they think that there's an emergency. The one misnomer in the whole reporting system is a false alarm. There's really no such thing as a false alarm. This is when you're sitting in a building and the alarms go off for no reason at all, or you really don't know. Generally, there's a reason why they go off. It might be the steam from a shower head. Somebody may have burnt toast, and they kind of get categorized in this false alarm. But the alarms went off because they detected a problem. They worked exactly the way they were intended to work, notifying somebody that something wasn't right because it noticed that. And so we had about 1,450 responses there. And those will continue to happen. That number stays pretty steady throughout the year. We had a couple severe weather events last year. If you remember, we had that windstorm that came through. I can't believe if it was June or July, I don't remember, but we had a few billboards, a few roofs that got blown down. The one I remember best in that storm was the roof that ended up on Main Avenue and blocked the street for a few hours there. So, and then just special incident types, really where we don't have a category for them to go under. They're just odd things that happen. People call 911 and we really don't know where to put it. So that's just a special incident type that we respond on. Somebody calls and says, hey, something's not right here. We go check it out. And so that's where those end up. The most common types of fires that we saw, building fires are still the most common types of fire. One disclaimer with the building fire is what gets classified as a building fire. So somebody may be cooking on their stove and actually have something on their stove start on fire, but the minute it touches the cabinets and scorches that or scorches the wall or does something like that, that automatically classifies it into a building fire. So there's a number of those that end up in building fires. Probably when we look at it as the significance of a building fire, we're right at about 40 building fires in a year. Vehicle fires are still pretty prevalent within the community with 52. Again, we have a lot of dumpster fires. We had one instance of an individual that wanted to light fires in dumpsters downtown last year. One of the fortunate things was he wanted to do it right behind Fire Station 1. And there was some video that was there we were able to figure out who that was, and that person was later apprehended, and I believe he served some time for that. Some rubbish fires, people burning stuff in their backyards that they're not supposed to, and then just a variety of other things in the other fires, vegetation fires, things like that. Where do most of the fires start? Most of the fires in Fargo are starting in the cooking area, generally in the kitchen. If you remember a number of years ago, probably right after I got here, I reported that we had an issue with fires on decks and apartments, and that was a big concern for us. We were close to 50 fires a year on decks. With our fire prevention division and the fire marshal's office and myself, we really worked with apartment owners and had meetings over the last number of years and talked about this. And you can see that number has shrunk down to 9, which we're really excited about, because those are one of the bigger areas that really concern us, is when we have an outside fire on a deck. Usually, like the next 5 days, the wind is supposed to blow 20 miles an hour, and that can quickly cause a lot of problems for us and cause a lot of damage and displace a lot of people. So you can see our total fire loss within our community last year was $2.4 million, which is staying pretty steady. I know a lot of communities within our region and around the country would be ecstatic with a $2.4 million fire loss. A community our size generally would see, based on statistics, somewhere between $4.5 to $6.5 million annually in fire loss. So we're well below what our statistical grouping would show. So we're really proud of that. And that's, you know, due to a lot of our fire prevention efforts, but it's also due to a lot of our strong code enforcement, a lot of work with building inspections and the city attorney's office as well in a lot of different areas there. You can see our pre-incident value. So we had $2.4 million in loss, but what we protected was $144 million in property. It's either personal property or buildings. So you can see there's a pretty good rate of return on a $14 million fire department budget, and maintaining $144 million of personal property and buildings with only a $2.4 million loss. When you look at total response times, we look at the 90th percentile as our goal, where we want to be. Our goal is to be at all places within the city within 6 minutes 90% of the time. You can see we're at 60. We're right at 60%. And this is based off the National Fire Protection Agency's recommendations for how quickly fire departments should respond and what that total response time is. And the things that make up the total response times are someone picks up the phone, calls 911, the dispatch center processes all that information, gets the address, then dispatches the fire trucks, and then our guys have to go from the station or wherever they're at, get to the truck, and then go from getting on the truck to getting to the door. We try to get there. Our goal is to get there in 6 minutes. That's a pretty tough goal to get to. When you look at, we spend about 6 minutes trying to drive there, just based on the city and based on station locations. Then you take about a minute or so to get into your gear, to get from wherever you're at to on the truck, and then the dispatch component of that. So we're hitting that 90% at 8 minutes and 15 seconds. And we've been consistently there for the last number of years. It hasn't really changed much there. When you look at total response times, it looks a little better when we look at it like this. EMS incidents were there a little bit slower at 8 minutes and 24 seconds. Our goal again is 60 seconds or 6 minutes. Fire incidents were there within 7 minutes and 1 second. And a lot of that component is tied into the dispatch portion of that. And with a fire, it's a lot easier on the dispatch end. Is I have a fire at my house. Well, what's your address? And they kind of know that. With the dispatch on the medical side, there's a protocol that they try to go through and try to figure out and determine what the actual problem is. And we're probably a little bit more okay with a little bit more delay on the EMS side. Now there's certain things with cardiac arrest and trauma and stroke that we want a quicker response, and we actually do better than this on those incidents. But we want to make sure that we're sending the right resource with the right people in the right amount of time. So the national trends and things that we're looking at is on lower acuity calls that there maybe take a little different time, and maybe they really don't need the 911 system for their medical care, but that may be the only option that they have for their medical care as well. And then you can see that our goal, if we have a fire, to get 4 fire engines and a ladder truck and a command vehicle there is 10 minutes and 20 seconds, and we're putting all of those people on scene in 11 minutes and 43 seconds. But the good thing is, that's only why that number is just a little bit skewed, is we just have a very small sector where we ever get all of those units there, because the first unit, a lot of times, the incident isn't as big as it is, so we don't get to that far. Like I said, we probably only have 40 incidents a year where all those resources arrive on one scene on each time that they're called. Some of the major accomplishments for this year is we've retained our accredited agency status again, and in July we will be having a site visit, provided we can safely host a peer team to come and review us. They're scheduled to show up the week of July 27th, so some of you they will like to visit with, so we'll get those scheduled here as we talk in the next few weeks or months here. We again retained our ISO Class 1 rating, which is the best that you can do in the ISO system. And that makes us one of 94 fire departments that are an accredited fire department and an ISO 1 rated fire department in the country. So we're in the top 100 in the country of fire departments I look at that are accredited and have an ISO Class 1. Like I had mentioned earlier, we have the automatic aid agreement with West Fargo last year. That was the first of its kind, and that worked out really well, and that was the first in, I believe, what will be many partnerships. We just had a second where we ran a recruit training class. Concurrently, we had a West Fargo recruit along with our Fargo recruits that we just graduated on Friday. So that was the second instance that we've worked together, and we're working more on training and things together there as well. One of the exciting things in our fire prevention, we were designated as a Built for Life fire department. This is by the National Fire Sprinkler Coalition. We set up demonstrations on home fire sprinklers and the importance of those. I've shown before how quickly in the new construction, how quickly homes and of the built out of the new construction type can burn based on the furniture and the furnishings and just the lightweight construction is there. A fire can be fully involved in a room and contents in less than 4 minutes in some of these newer constructions. So home sprinkler systems are really important to put in. If we do that, we're just not allowed to mandate those in within our community. Another exciting thing through fire prevention and through our suppression folks, we get out to all the schools every year, and so 5,300 kids between kindergarten and second grade were taught to call 911. They were taught 2 ways out and various other fire safety messages. We again worked with certifying members of our hazmat technical rescue and a water rescue team. We have 30 members within the department, 10 on each of the 3 shifts, and 10 on the tech rescue and 10 on the water rescue. So that's their specialty, is they're really supposed to be the local experts in those areas. And the water rescue is one area where the technology is increasing. We've equipped some of our boats with side and down imaging sonar so that we can better search in the river for people. If we need to in some of the retention ponds, if they get full enough, we can also launch into there. We had 3 new members join our team last year, and that was exciting for us because that made it, we hired our 500th career firefighter in the city of Fargo last year. We became a career fire department in 1903. And we've had 500 people work for the fire department in those years. So that was exciting, and now we've added 5 more on top of that already. So it continues to grow. One of the things is we always have some collaboration within city departments, and one thing that used to be taken care of at Central Garage was the repair and maintenance of our self-contained breathing apparatus, which took time away from our vehicle technicians and kept them from being able to always work on the vehicles that they needed. So we worked together, and we trained up some firefighters within our fire station on the north side, and they're doing the repair and maintenance and got them certified in maintaining those. So that's just kind of the way we work together to make sure that everybody can do what they need to do, and we found that it's been working fairly well. We worked with the inspection department in the last year to adopt the 2018 fire code. We do that every 3 years, so there was an adoption there that you all voted on. I can't remember if it was last September or October, something like that. We did 135 different events where our crews are at, or fire prevention or our EMS people were at, and we interacted with 14,000 residents. That's one of the things that we started to do a better job of tracking how many events and how many contacts we have with people and talk about fire safety messages. One of the new and exciting things is that we've implemented over the last couple of years, and it's really starting to take off, pun intended, is the Red River Unmanned Aircraft Systems Group. That's a partnership between the Fargo Fire Department, Fargo PD, Cass County Sheriffs, West Fargo Fire, and West Fargo PD. The fire department, we have 6 pilots that we have trained to fly the various aircraft that we have, and we've had a lot of great partnerships with that. We've actually done some work for engineering. We've flown some of the drains and things like that for them on various inspections where it's difficult to get in. We can bring the drone in and fly at those low levels, and somebody doesn't have to walk down those side slopes and check for cracks, and we have the video surveillance of that for them. And then we've had multiple call-outs where pilots have been there assisting PD and the sheriff's office in different flights looking for people. The last thing I'd like to bring up is where our folks do on their days when they're not at the fire stations. Our firefighters are very active in the MDA Fill the Booth. They do that 3 days throughout the summer. They take their day with the Salvation Army bell ringing and man all the kettles in town. They're flipping burgers for Christmas gift, Christmas wish. And then on Christmas Day, they're delivering gifts to kids that are in the hospital. So just a lot of good charitable work that our folks do outside of their duties at the fire department, and they do that all off duty. So with that ends my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions by any of the commissioners? Commissioner Gray, you want to make any comment?
Yeah, so with the budget coming up, we're talking about new stations and adding individuals, and we can see the clear need for stations in South Fargo. And as 64th Avenue comes on and things like that, we're gonna see even more need for that. So hopefully we can come together as a commission and start putting money away for those types of important things for our department that's been very busy and doing a great job.
Thank you.
It was a nice graduation to see 5 new candidates come up and join the department, as well as one West Fargo candidate. And it's also good to see the departments are working together so we can cover both cities without adding more and more to stations by using each other cross-reference. So,
And I believe that's going to be a big thing in the future as we look. There'll be a nice opportunity for us to look at that in the future.
can we put the expensive stations in West Fargo when we have the less no?
We can do it all about the same price.
We're going to go to public hearings. We have a continuation to 6/1/20, the application for the Spirit Properties license at Edgewood Tavern. Do I have a motion?
Move to continue.
Is there a second?
Second.
Then second it. Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Gary.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Item B, application filed by Financial Business Systems Incorporated for a property tax exemption for a project located at 4601 33 Avenue South, which the applicant will use in operation of a software development company for a real estate industry. Ben Hushka to explain.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The Tax Exempt Review Committee met on this application, spoke with the applicant. They are growing their software business. They are also taking on a new product line. And I believe we may have somebody online from Financial Business Systems. Yep, we have 3 people.
Yes, correct.
So if you'd like
Would you
to.
like to let them speak first? Do you want to go
Sure.
through? Let them speak?
Sure.
Okay. Could you introduce yourself, please, and speak to this proposition?
Sure. Yep, my name is Joelle Stoller, and I'm the CFO at Financial Business Systems. So I just want to give just a brief overview of the company. We are incorporated in 1978 and have been in Fargo since that time. We created our web-based version of that software in around 1989. And the branding of our software is FlexMLS. So we currently serve over 250,000 realtors with that software product. In 2005, we became 100% employee owned. Since becoming an ESOP, we've grown our employee base from 30 employees to nearly 130 employees today. So, like he said, this summer we'll be launching a new product called FlowPlan, which will integrate with our current software program. And the short of FlowPlan is it's an easy to create floor plan for real estate listings. And the technology allows a realtor to create a floor plan with a smartphone versus an expensive piece of equipment. So we're, really excited about this product, and that's really where we're seeing our growth for the next several years.
Thank you very much. Ben, you want to go ahead?
Sure. One thing I would like to point out on the second page of the application, the figures on the bottom, the application that they made, they gave the value of the total, the brand new building. They are in a current building, and typically with expansions, we recommend the incremental difference in the value of the building they're in and grant the exemption, or recommend granting the exemption on only the expansion portion. So the figures that you see, if you look at the
the lower right number on the second page, item number 16F, where they're calculating based on the entire new building, the annual amount of the tax exemption being $55,563. Actually, if you look at the difference between the 3.8 million and the little over 1.1 million of their current building, that would be an amount of annual tax exemption estimated at about 39,000 rather than the 55,000. The Tax Review Committee considered the expansion portion and the fact that although they're adding only 3 positions the first year, they're adding actually that and more each subsequent year, and all are in our highest salary category. So the Tax Exempt Review Committee recommends approval of a 100% exemption for 5 years on the incremental difference in value.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this tax exemption? Is there anyone present online who wants to speak to this exemption? If no, I'll close public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Gary?
Whoever wants to answer on the phone, if you guys don't get the exemption or the incentive today, would you still build your building, expand, and hire more individuals?
You know, we would. We've been a Fargo company for the 40 years, and we'd love to stay in Fargo. We're getting close to starting on the building, so I think from that standpoint we would go ahead with it. It would help us a lot with that expansion and really what we're trying to accomplish with our growth.
Mr. Gary?
Thank you for your honesty, and I'm very happy you're staying in Fargo and growing with Fargo, and I wish you all the success. That being said, if there's no but-for questions, I'll be voting no.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Gary?
No.
Mahoney?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 2C, amendments to the 2019 Action Plan and Citizen Participation Plan, Community Development Block Grant, CBDG, and Home Investment Partnership Programs. Tia Brasson's going to explain, or no, Nicole? I'm sorry.
Now we have Tia on the phone if the questions get too detailed, but I'll start with today. This is the first step, as you know, as part of the stimulus funding, with COVID, CDBG, as a local entitlement city, was allotted $464,000. And some of the preliminary steps to accepting that money include amending our plan. And so this is a public hearing to let the public know we intend to amend the plan. And along with that, item 3 on your memo talks about the citizen participation plan. And so as part of the HUD program, we have to have an approved citizen participation plan that lets the public know, lets HUD know what our how we intend to notify the public. One of the waivers that came through with the stimulus funding is being able to shorten that period from 30 days to 5 days. And so but then we have to accept that as a plan. And so what we're doing here is telling you and telling HUD that we intend to use the 5-day notification process. And so that's step 3. And then the second item, the temporary rental assistance program, I guess we have a slight amendment. We would suggest we partner with the state of North Dakota as they've rolled out a rent bridge program. And this is a statewide program that goes to citizens, that's eligible for citizens statewide. And we're in preliminary discussions with the Department of Human Services. And as a component of that, they would like to allocate this rent bridge assistance program to citizens of Fargo, which we would like as well. However, as a CDBG, if they use their CDBG entitlement, they can't apply that funding to local citizens in Fargo. And so this is a partnership we'd like to do with the state. And we want to, I would say if I were to amend this, it'd be up to $464,000. We're not quite sure we want to allocate that entire $464,000 to the rent bridge program. And so you can be sure that we're going to have amendments in front of you through this COVID response, probably for the next couple of weeks, over the next several months, as I'm not sure what other allocations are going to be coming to us through future stimulus, as well as what the future holds. And so, as such, at this point, we just want to start the ball rolling by amending our 2019 action plan, which is one decision, doing the citizen participation plan, which is a second decision, and then third, participating with the rental assistance program at the state level, and we can have more detailed discussions up to how much of that as we move forward. And this is a little different. It used to be with this new waiver process, we would have the public hearing and then I'd come back to you a couple weeks later to affirm that. So today we'd like to have the public hearing plus act on it, so that will help us get the steps rolling with HUD. And so I'm here to answer any questions.
Any Commissioner Grunberg?
Mr. Chairman and Nicole, just to clarify then, this agenda item will be amending the 2019 action plan with approval. And then you're going to talk in more detail under 34 COVID updates on the memo that you have, and a little more specific, and there'll be a motion there as well.
Yes, for the rental bridge program, yeah.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this change? Is there anyone present virtually who wishes to speak to this change? Hearing none, I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move the recommended motion to approve the proposed amendments to the CDBG block grant program for the 2019 action plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Gary.
Yes.
Strand. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Item 26D, Renaissance Zone Project for Epic Gateway North Real Estate Holdings for a new construction project located at 300 Main Avenue. Nicole Crutchfield again at the helm.
Yeah, I walked away too quickly. This item is in front of you tonight as a Renaissance Zone application by Epic Gateway. They may be on the phone today. We're not 100% sure, but this is one of their first phase of their project at 300 Main Avenue, and they would like to build a building, kind of a multi-story building with mixed-use commercial and residential at 300 Main Avenue, and basically transform the former parking lot to a 5-story building, 86,000 square feet, and with underground parking. They include 50 units of apartments and ground floor commercial. This was presented to the Renaissance Zone Authority and was unanimously approved, and we have this in front of you tonight. With a eligible score of 100 points, our staff ranked it as 98 points, and so we do think this meets the intention of the Renaissance Zone regulations.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this Renaissance Zone? Is there anyone who wishes to speak? We'll close.
Brian from Epic Companies is on the phone, if you have any questions.
Ryan, are you pretty excited about this? Are you going to still have the frying pan?
We are excited about it, and yes, we are going to still have the frying pan.
A lot of people are concerned. That's kind of our town hall place. Thank you.
Yep, no, they're ready to upgrade their facilities also, so it'll be great.
Any commissioners have any questions for Brian?
I do.
Mr. Garrick?
Brian, Tony Garrick, same question as I asked before. And first of all, thank you for looking at improving this area. It's kind of the first thing you see on Main Avenue when you come into Fargo from Moorhead. So it's exciting to see that we'll get a facelift. If you don't get the Renaissance Zone incentive today, would you still proceed with your plans?
I don't know that we would proceed with the same plans that we have right now. We probably would do just some major renovation to the building that's already there versus actually do a major new reconstruction. It's really hard to say, without going through all those motions. So it's possible, but it is definitely, it would make it a very difficult stretch for us.
Thanks for your honesty.
Any other questions to the candidate or the applicant? Close public hearing, go to a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move for approval, and then I'll have a comment after, if there's a second.
Was there a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Commissioner Grunberg?
Mr. Chairman, this is a great project, as outlined in front of the Planning Commission last month. a couple questions that had surfaced. And from a, I call it a 5-year window, I guess, maybe is a way of describing it. This is the first phase to move forward. Second phase, as I would define it, will be the raising of the high-rise. You might recall recently the vouchers approval and transitioning folks out of the high-rise. And eventually that property by the Fargo Housing Authority will develop a new project for low-income housing and a mixed use as well, as I understand it. That's probably, in my opinion, looking at Nicole, you know, a year out yet. But ultimately, that is the direction the Fargo Housing Authority is going, is to provide complementary housing in that area to fulfill their mission. And then the third phase, building on Commissioner Gehrig's point, is the land that we own, Park East as it's called. And as we define as the city of Fargo, what development we want to have developed there in an RFP process, then that whole complex, imagine 5 years from now, will be the grand entrance into North Dakota, Fargo from Minnesota. And so I think it's an exciting project because of the 3 phases, if you will, to look to the future on that side of downtown. And then if you want to dream even a little larger, kitty corner to the northeast, the eventual development of the Mid-America Steel site will be some profound areas for our city.
So one of the things I think we have to compliment the planning department is to get the vouchers for the Fargo high-rise is tremendous. That was one of the things that's key to getting anything going there. And our department worked very vigorously with that department and got them to move along with this. And there's also some affordable housing in this area as well, so that will help us greatly. Mr. Pepcorn.
So, Mr. Chair, the other thing that happened was that back in the day, the DOT was not excited about changing that from a 5-lane to a 3-lane. And I was also very skeptical of that. And Governor Burgum was obviously a little bit enthusiastic, saying, oh, this is going to change and I was like, yeah, I don't know if I believe that. And so they said, yeah, within maybe 10 or 15 years, it would change the development of Main Avenue. And now, literally, Main Avenue, that section was done last year, and now it's going to change this next year. And so it's amazing. And what it is, it's walkability and making it a more pedestrian-friendly street than what it was. And so it's phenomenal. And the other thing is, this is the Renaissance Zone, a phenomenal success. If you look at that financially, over the past 20 years, there hasn't been a better government program in North Dakota than that, the impact of that. And so we're very fortunate, and especially to have this happening now. We have depression-level unemployment around the United States, and here in North Dakota, we're going to lead the way out of this thing, and I think that's very exciting. So it's a great project, and lots of people deserve credit, including the past legislators, but you know, the state of North Dakota has helped with this, and our planning department and all the staff. So it's a great day, and when you combine it with that whole block is eventually going to be reconfigured, and so it'll be very symbolic of our city. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Gehrig.
No.
Mahoney.
Aye. Item E, 701 Brew Edition. Approval recommended by Planning Commission 3320. Zoning change from an MR multi-dwelling residential to a downtown mixed use First reading of the rezoning ordinance and plat of the 701 Brew Edition. And Donald Kress, you probably have some good pictures because it was so sunny today, huh?
Well, I was out actually yesterday, sir, but we do have some photographs hot off the press there. Good evening, Commissioners. Donald Kress from the Department of Planning and Development. I'll be presenting the next 2 items, and these items, the packets include zone change prepared by the City Attorney's Office. As the Mayor has stated, 701 Brew Edition here is located here at on the corner of University Drive North and 7th Avenue here, 701 University Drive North, and then these 2 properties on 702 and 706 12th Street North. A proposal for a minor subdivision. We're going to combine, the applicant is going to combine these 3 lots into 1 lot, and then a zone change. This lot here, as we'll see, is currently zoned MR3. All 3 lots will be changed to DMU, so it'll just be 1 zoning on the entire property. Here are the pictures. This is from the University Drive side. For those of you who are longtime Fargoans, Rosie's was here. This is on the adjacent property. This is not included in the development. And then here we're looking for the corner of 7th Avenue North and and 12th Street. As you see, the building here being added on to, some more development, and then this is that 706 property. This building will be removed. So these two properties and that one will all be combined into a single DMU property. Again, this just reinforcing what we looked at here. That one's MR3. This will all be DMU, which is the appropriate zoning for this type of activity here. And a very straightforward plat here. Just again, combining 3 lots into a single lot. The applicant's representative, Chris Hawley of Chris Hawley Architects, I believe is on video with us here. The Planning Commission's recommendation is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen. That concludes staff's presentation. Thank you, Commissioners.
Chris, do you want to make any comments? And that's our question, when will the restaurant open?
Well, I guess the world needs to tell us when it's going to open, I guess. But, you know, I think they're going to have it ready here by this fall. So, and we're on track for that.
And is this going to be a brewery with food type thing? Is that what you're intending?
So I don't know if you're familiar with the 701 group, but they're, you know, they run a number of restaurants, the brew in the lakes area. They also have the little, you know, the chicken place kind of on University now, and you know, and end up having a brew in Wahpeton. This will be kind of a mix, a rooftop patio, kind of a nice gathering space, and then a very, very high-end restaurant on the main floor. And you know, the main floor is essentially, you know, I don't want to say it's fine dining, but pretty close. And so, you know, very much kind of heavy-handed on the design stuff. We've got a kind of an international team working on the interiors and the building, and it's going to be a pretty special little restaurant spot. So.
Thank you. Any questions by commissioners of Chris? Hope they have chicken. We'll have chicken by then or whatever. Do I have a motion, please? Excuse me, anyone present wishes to speak to this zoning change? Anyone present wishing to speak? Close public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Locally sourced chicken, like from the backyard.
I was gonna say,
Right? All right, I had to do it.
where the +2 went.
Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg,
Aye.
Gary.
Yes.
Strand,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
I mean, yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. Thank you, Donald. Oh, can't go yet, okay. Next item we have is a Golden Valley 3rd Edition, approval recommended by the Planning Commission on 11/5/19, zoning change from agricultural to single dwelling residential and public institutional with conditional overlay. First reading of the rezoning ordinance and a plat of the Golden Valley 3rd Edition.
Good evening again, Commissioners. So this is the proposed Golden Valley 3rd Edition on top of the Golden Valley 1st and 2nd Editions. And as a preview of coming attractions, Golden Valley 4th Edition will be coming before your commission on June 1st. So that'll pretty much fill up this area. But we're just looking at the 3rd Edition here tonight. As we see, located here on 25th Street South, here's Davies High School. Here's Drain 53. And then across Drain 53 is the recently approved Selkirk 1st Edition plat, just as a location. Some bright sunny photos here from yesterday shows a large undeveloped lot. Here we're looking from 67th Avenue, which will continue across the property and connect to the similarly platted 67th Avenue in the Selkirk subdivision. And then here's 26th Street, currently dead-ended here, will continue all the way north. The current zoning is agricultural. This property has never been developed. The proposed zoning is SR4, single dwelling residential. There's 44 residential lots are proposed. And then there's one lot that'll be down here, which is a homeowners association owned park. And that will be contiguous. We'll segue into the plat here. This will be contiguous with a similar HOA owned park here in the Golden Valley 2nd Edition. And it's also zoned PI and public institutional, which is the zoning that we use for this. And there's a conditional overlay to restrict it to only be used as a park. So other uses that are available in the PI zone aren't available here. As it is a homeowners association, there are covenants that create that homeowners association. And those covenants include city-approved language that clearly defines the HOA's obligations to pay taxes on and maintain the HOA lot, and provide the city a course of action to continue to collect taxes and maintain these lots should the HOA fail. There is also, looking at 67th Avenue here, you see it's lined up to cross the drain here. The corresponding section, again, is on the plat across the drain. And the developer is not required to actually build the drain crossing, just to dedicate the right-of-way for it. And then there's one more graphic that was included in your packet here. Just again, these are the residential lots here. And there's one more graphic included in your packet. This is a conceptual future phase. When you look back at the plat here, you'll see this area here was not platted. At the time of platting, the developer was looking at a few different options. There were some potential possibilities for that I'm not sure that they came to pass, but when we have unplatted property like that, we do just ask for a conceptual layout. This is not something your commission is approving tonight, but we ask for this just to get an idea of how it might go together and if the proposals will tie into, you know, the character of the surrounding area. I don't know if Mr. John Eunice from Eagle Ridge Development is on the phone. I didn't see him on the video. I don't know if he's on the phone.
I'm on the phone.
Okay, so John Eunice of Eagle Ridge Development is the developer, is with us tonight and may wish to address the commission. The Planning Commission's recommendation is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you, commissioners.
Do you have some comments, please?
None from me.
Just open for questions, okay. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this zoning change? Is there anybody who wishes to speak via video or phone to speak? If not, we'll close public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Gehrig.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Aye.
Mahoney.
It's nice that you're filling in that space. It looks good. Looks like it's coming along nicely when I go down to Davies. It's nice to see that fill in. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Now we're going to a hearing on a dangerous building located at 1007 8th Avenue North. Bruce Tarleson to explain.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Bruce Tarleson, Inspections Department, to present a dangerous building case for 1007 8th Avenue North. We did receive some new information late last week, and so this case should take a little different direction today. So I'd like to give you a little data on dangerous building actions we've taken over the last year and a half or two. We've had 32 dangerous building or unsafe structure cases, and it's approximately 2 per month that we deal with. 9 cases were forwarded to City Commission for action. 6 structures were repaired to usable condition. 14 structures were demolished, 11 by the owner, 3 by the City of Fargo. And that's about 1 per month. And there's 12 cases we're currently monitoring in various stages. Any questions about that?
Mr. Chair, I have a question. So Bruce, the ones that the city demolished, then can you talk a little bit about how we get compensated for that?
So that causes a lot of financial issues with our cases. We do take bids according to financial policy. So things changed about a year ago with the health department, which required us to do all hazardous material remediation if we did the dangerous building action and did the demolition ourselves. It adds about another 2 to 3 months and a lot of extra funds to do that demolition. We track it, we get quotes, we accept the quote, we move forward, and even through that process, there could be another action by the owner. They could even go forward with the demolition if they tried themselves. If we do it, we pay the contractor. The funds come through to the inspections department. We monitor that in a separate account, and that account gets taken care of at the end of the year through the assessments to the property. So they go to the assessment, they go through the taxes, and then they end up back on the property.
Thank you.
So for today's case at 1007 8th Avenue North, the information we received late last week, Friday and Sunday, that there's new owner on the property. We actually received the deed on Friday, which allowed us to talk to the new owner. I received statements from an engineering company, a local engineering company in Fargo, and the owner that they will take all the steps necessary to save this structure. Getting those two statements, we agreed to write a demolition permit today so that they could do some investigative removal so the engineer could look at the entire structure to verify that it can be saved. So with that, if we can get a continuance for 2 weeks, we will require a permit for the full work on the structure by May 29th, so June 1st we can be done with this case. And I feel assured that it will happen by then.
Can I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion and a comment after a second.
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 Bruce, maybe step back with the data you shared on the front end. Can you give us kind of your opinion on, where we're at as a city of being more proactive and working with property owners, maybe than in the past years where some of the concerns from core neighborhood leaders was that we were very lax in our diligence to work with some of these dilapidated properties. And the numbers you cited kind of gives me reinforcement that, we've had other decisions up here with some other properties. And, in your opinion, are we making progress of being fair and transparent to the property owner, giving them the opportunity, but yet standing firm so that we're addressing these types of properties and neighborhoods where concern has been over deterioration?
I even thought about the 12 cases that we're still monitoring to that effect. Every one of them is a little bit different. We have hoarding cases. We have had people that have passed away. We have people that just let it dilapidate. We have rental property that remained in the same condition for 40 years. So we do deal with each one differently. And it's hard to say. I think so. I go walking neighborhoods a lot lately, and I feel I can see a difference just in the conditions. And so I think we're making a difference. It's hard to say, are we dealing with this due to what the complainant wants or not, because of all the differences. Foreclosure actions seem to be taking between 1 and 3 years. We have 3 of those going right now. And those are the most difficult. An owner leaves the picture. This property sometimes sits there for a year, which is in limbo. There's no real owner to deal with. We send the notices. We kind of take possession of the property. We board the properties up. We have contractors ready to go to do that. So whatever we got to do to keep it going, but then if the bank won't take care of it, then we'll take it here. So everyone's a little different, but I feel we're making a difference.
Commissioner Pipcorn.
So, Mr. Chair, I just want to say, Bruce, you're doing a great job, and I think we have to be very careful that we treat the people fairly that are the owners of these houses, but you also have to take into consideration their neighbors. And people deserve to be able to live in a neighborhood where there's not a dump next door. There's animals, there's waste, there's all those things and so in the past we didn't do anything. We would just let them sit, and I think you have to be very careful, and I think you've done a great job of going through the process, and so I think we're doing the right thing. I think you have to be very careful, but from my perspective, I think you're doing a great job, and I want you to relay that to your staff. I'm very pleased with what you're doing, and I think it's having a positive impact, and especially on our older neighborhoods. There's lots of beautiful homes, but if you're next to a dumpy house, what's your incentive? And so it's a very difficult job that you're doing. Thank you for doing it, and I think you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. And we're all in agreement with this inspection being ramped up the way it is, but I think it's worth noting with this property, it was a fire. So it's not a pattern and a history of dilapidation and running it down into the ground. So I'm glad we're giving the new owners some room to work with. Yeah, there were some vehicles leading up to that fire, but if there hadn't been a fire, this house would be still lived in. So I don't see this as the same as other dilapidated, blighted homes. But I join in commending our department for your action, and the word is out to the community. Get your act together, or you're not going to have your property to work with. Plain and simple.
It is a very delicate balancing act, like you say, with personal property. We do give every allowance to save that structure if we feel it can be saved. So that's why we call some dangerous buildings and some unsafe structures. Unsafe, we usually feel that they can be saved. Dangerous buildings, no, not so much. I feel that there will be another one here in 2 weeks and another one in another 2 weeks.
Good to know your department's still working. Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Gehrig.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. We'll take a 5-minute break, come back at 6:12 and get to our last items.
Fed chairman said last.
Call the meeting back to order. Item 29, recommendation for an interim policy on Boulevard Gardens. Kim Lepetsky to explain.
Well, good evening, and thank you for your time again tonight. At the last City Commission meeting, in response to requests from residents to allow Boulevard Gardens, we were tasked with developing a set of policy recommendations for Boulevard gardening with a sunset date of September 30th, 2020. To do this, we looked into Boulevard planting types of policies in a few other cities to see what provisions they included in something like this. And those cities were Sioux Falls, Twin Cities, Des Moines, Iowa, and Moorhead. And we kind of used Moorhead as a guide since they are just right across the river. I also followed up with impacted city departments. At the last meeting, we mentioned that we had a Zoom meeting with a number of different city departments that would have been impacted by this particular topic. Planning, engineering, public works, forestry, environmental health. So I followed up with the staff from each of these departments to get input and approval for a Boulevard Garden plan. I also received permission from the zoning administration to allow plantings other than grass on the boulevard, so this is not going to conflict with any other city laws. Then developed a program with certain provisions, and in your agenda packet you have the terms and conditions, a permit application form, and a draft sample of educational information that will be provided as part of this program. So as far as the specifics of the program, the program will be administered through Fargo Public Health and housed on the Let's Eat Local website. Let's Eat Local is run by the health department, and it has things like the community garden list, which is a list of different community gardening opportunities in Cass and Clay County. It also has community-supported agriculture information, different farmers markets, the backyard chicken application, and so forth are on this site. Interested residents will need to apply for a permit. The application form is in your packet. It includes a place for the North Dakota One Call ticket information, also a spot to list proposed plantings and description of the work, as well as a request for a drawing of the plans. Also, as part of the application process, is agreement to the terms and conditions which lay out the specific provisions in detail, which I'll cover in just a minute. These items need to be agreed upon and signed by the applicant before a permit is issued. The program would be effective immediately and would have that end date of September 30th. So the terms and conditions were, they're also in your packet. They include the provisions of the program, many of which are there to kind of mitigate any potential concerns. They start off with some clarifiers and definitions, like what is a boulevard garden. It can include turf, plants, flowers, pollinators, and vegetables. Also has a definition of what the boulevard is and what that space is. The terms and conditions also include planting stipulations, for example, plants not to exceed 24 inches to keep sight lines clear. No overhang on the sidewalks and curves in streets, and there is a 1 foot buffer that's built in there between the curb and the plantings, and the sidewalk and the plantings to kind of keep the garden contained. No installation within the drip line of existing trees. This is to protect the roots of a tree that might be on the boulevard. No open soil for erosion, but are allowed to use shredded hardwood mulch. And then no boulders and structures, walls, fences on that to decrease any chance of tripping. The terms and conditions lay out the application process. Also addresses the applicant's responsibility, including maintenance, to keep the boulevard up and looking nice. Lets the applicant know that the city can still access utilities and whatever is underneath the boulevard, and the city is not responsible to replace the plants that might get lost in the process. They also include items to protect the city, such as an indemnification clause and the need for liability insurance, naming the city as additionally insured. And they address the responsibility of the applicant to restore the boulevard back to the grass.
Just a question on the liability insurance. Isn't that covered by the homeowners, or do they have to get additional?
Well, I think it's my understanding you have to get a sheet that says that the city is additionally insured if you're going to be on the boulevard. So,
Eric, is that, you'd have to tell your insurance agent, or what would you have to do?
Yeah, I think that the program assumes that, yeah, the homeowner's coverage would provide this kind of insurance through an endorsement. That's the sheet that Kim is talking about.
yeah, when we do Streets Alive, we usually get something that from the insurance company that names whoever it is additionally insured under the policy. So
if they cut a cable, you're saying your insurance carrier would pay for them cutting the cable? What would the insurance company cover? You're putting vegetables in the site. Is it if you damage something? Grubb said that the pipes are many feet below, so really the only thing you could do is hit a wire or street wire or something like that. Your insurance carrier, is that your thought process? Is that'll pay for the issue, or?
I'm not quite exactly sure.
Well, I'm trying to figure out why we'd have liability insurance on vegetables. I'm just.
Yeah.
Any, or, no?
No.
Okay.
I mean, and if it's something that we don't need to require, it would be fine to take out of there. It was in the Moorhead policy, and it was something that
I would just think your homeowner's policy would cover you for whatever it covers. But
okay. And we can check into that and see if homeowners does, or if there's any additional piece that we would need to have to.
Yeah, I'd try to simplify it, because if it's just part of your boulevard and you get into something, we have the usual discussions, so.
Okay, yeah.
Mayor, if I may, I think the indemnification and hold harmless language and the naming the city as the additional insured are sort of standard procedures we use whenever there's an encroachment in the right of way. So I think that's where that came from. And the idea is if, let's just say a motorist somehow left the roadway and ran into a structure in the right of way that was, and we permitted it on the right of way, they sue the city of Fargo. The idea of the indemnification hold harmless, backed by the insurance, is that if the city's named in a claim or a lawsuit, but really it's the act of the homeowner that put the structure on the right of way, they'll defend the city's position. That's the basic structure.
Clarity is important, though.
Relationship.
Mr. Gary?
I think clarity on that is important. We should probably talk to Moorhead and get the intent of what they're saying. Because if like you're saying, if this is a barrier to do it, and people just don't know what that means or how to get that, or maybe some insurances won't do that, maybe it's something we need to look at and clarify for folks.
Okay. Yeah, we'll look into it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So the applicant will need to just agree and sign off on the terms and conditions as part of the application for the permit. Also included as part of this program is some education and some items to consider, and links to different resources will be provided. Included will be like an easy to read check-off sheet at the end of the terms and conditions to make sure that various things have been considered before looking into doing this. Things such as, do the neighborhood covenants or homeowners associations allow things like this in that particular development, making sure there's a full understanding of the terms and conditions and the responsibility of the homeowner to call the North Dakota One call. The checkoff sheet also has some easy to read planting requirements, just lists them all there so they're easy to see. We will also be including a frequently asked questions page on the website to address items to consider and potential concerns. And the frequently asked questions will address information on things like location, soil quality, sightline, maintenance. And I'll give you just kind of a couple of examples of a few of the questions. One of them is going to be, can vegetables or edibles be planted on the boulevard? And the answer is yes, but there might be other areas in your property to consider that might be a better fix, such as a raised bed in the backyard. But as we talked about at the last meeting, sometimes this isn't possible because people don't have much of a backyard and the sun is not great to grow anywhere other than on the boulevard. So another question would be, how do I know the soil in the boulevard is right for growing plants? And especially concerns if the soil is safe to grow vegetables and edibles. And the answer would be that in the boulevards, there are certain issues like the salt that might have been deposited during the winter snow removal and a potential for a small amount of motor oil from the street. But some things to consider to mitigate these concerns will include, one, assessing the street that's in front of your house to see what kind of a concern this really is. There will be more of a concern if you live in a high traffic area versus a small side street. Research shows the risk from plants taking up contaminants can be mitigated by doing a couple of things, and these tips are good to remember regardless of if you're planting on the boulevard or you're planting anywhere in your yard. To add compost to dilute any potential soil contamination that might be in there. Have your soil tested and be sure the nutrient levels in the soil are appropriate. Research shows that plants are less likely to take up contaminants if they have ideal nutrients in the soil in the first place, and NDSU does provide soil testing. When you harvest a vegetable, just make sure it's washed thoroughly to get any excess dirt or soil off. And then looking at what your situation is in your planting. Maybe you plant pollinators closer to the road and move the vegetables closer up to the sidewalk. There's also vegetables that take up less, have that opportunity to take up less contaminants, things such as tomatoes and cucumbers and squash and berries and eggplants. There's also certain vegetables that do fine in a higher salt and are more tolerant to high salt soils, things like bell peppers and broccoli, cabbage, kale, spinach, tomatoes, and so forth. So there's ways to get around some of the issues with potential contamination in the boulevard. Another one is to make sure that sightline is maintained for pedestrians and bicyclists. And one way a tip to do this is use a gradual approach to planting. Have your lower plants closer to the edge and to the curb, and then use your taller plants more in the middle, with not going over 24 inches with any plants that you're planting in the boulevard. And then another one is how do I keep my plants looking nice the entire season? A recommendation would be to start small, especially if this is something new for you, to remember that gardens are a lot of work and require regular maintenance, but have a mix of plants that have blooms throughout the season. And we've got a lot of great local resources to consult with, area nurseries, Cass County Extension, that can give ideas for good mixes of plants that will bloom throughout the season. So we'll also have other questions on soil erosion and restoration and those types of things, just to kind of provide some more education around this topic as we move forward with it. So as I mentioned, we will also include on the website resources, and there are a lot of them here.
Can we just get to the motion, please? They can go to the website for the education on the garden. I'm not going away with that, but there's a motion of what we want to do in this, so can we go to that?
Yep. So the motion is to approve the policy on Boulevard Gardens and authorize the Director of Health and its designee to issue a permit that includes encroachment rights.
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Grinberg?
I'd like to further amend. I will support this motion through September 30th, but I would like Public Health to come back, pick a date, December 1st, the first meeting in December, with a full report and pictures of every one of them we've issued permits on, and a report of how it went.
Okay.
And maybe by December you'd have a couple months to do that, but I would like to learn and understand, including any complaints, including the best practices, things people learned, a full report so that we can understand what took place.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, so what's happening here is we're making a policy and there was no process. It's just being thrown at the city commission. This should have gone through the planning department and the planning commission. That's where this should have started. It doesn't come directly to us. There's a whole list of things that aren't addressed. Our city legal perspective, we're just throwing stuff out. Well, it might be this. You got to have this all ironed out. This isn't just something let's just do it and see what happens. You have to go through the procedure. That's what we didn't do. So it isn't appropriate for us to be voting on this at all. We didn't follow the process. We're just skipping it over. Why are we skipping it? Because it's a pandemic? So it's a garden emergency? So we're just skipping all of our process. All of our departments should have been considered on this, and they weren't. That's not appropriate. So I think we need to just stop and start and go through the whole process correctly before we vote on this. One example is, how much is this going to cost and who's going to pay for it? Is it free? Can you answer me that? Who's going to pay for this? How much does it cost?
Well, it's the homeowner is going to be planting on the boulevard. I mean,
No, but I mean all this stuff, all the staff time and all that. Who's going to, is this a free thing for everybody to do? So it's free to the homeowner?
well, since it's an interim policy, we didn't put a fee on it.
Isn't that great? It's free. That's freaking fantastic. We don't have to, it doesn't cost anything and we don't have to pay anything. And it's the public right of way. That's public land. No, that's a big deal. But don't worry about it. Let's just go ahead and you know what it is? It feels good, doesn't it? You know what I was doing all weekend? Planting my garden. And I'm a gardener, but this is ridiculous. And for us to vote on this is inappropriate. So that's my comments. I got a whole list of things, but this is totally inappropriate to have this be at the city commission level without any questions being answered. Is very bad governing. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Tony, did you make a motion to amend?
Pardon?
I did, yep.
I'll second the motion, the amendment.
What was the amendment?
You want a full report by December 1st or whatever?
First meeting in December.
Mr. Chairman, I want to know where the money's coming from for this. If we're going to pass this, who's paying for it in our budget?
Well, it's basically a health department, it's an application and you approve the applications.
Right, right.
That's the only cost to the city.
What's the cost? What's the cost? Where's the money coming from? I want to know.
Well, it's part of public health. We have the health promotion division. I have some chronic disease funds that go towards our food partners work.
I want to know the amount of money that this is going to cost and where is the money coming from?
It's through Fargo Cast Public Health. Through our
The
health
amount of
promotion.
money. Tell me this costs something, doesn't it? Or is it free?
Commissioner, she's covered in the budget, so Kim's salary in her department is covered in the present budget. There's no more money going into it.
No.
Bruce Grobdy, would you have an idea what we have in health department in our budget, or Mike, would you know that? We can research that and bring it back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Strand, I think you wanted to say something?
I did, and you know, we didn't have this process followed for the liquor discussion. All of a sudden, and you run the liquor board, why didn't we follow that for that?
Because we had I'll answer the question. Because we had a pandemic,
and we have a
and
pandemic
our
here.
businesses were closed, and so they were all laid off and they were losing money. I thought Commissioner Grinberg's concept was awesome. Actually, a lot of places that was a legitimate emergency. Come on, John. This is not a gardening emergency.
If you're hungry, it is. We have a lot of people unemployed, a lot of people in food lines. You're aware of that, aren't you?
There are a lot of people in food lines.
Yeah, are you aware of that?
And chickens are raised on farms, right? Remember that?
But
Mr. Strand, instead of asking dialogue back and forth, can you just make your statement, please?
Thank you for bringing this forward and for serving the people. I've heard from a lot of people who are appreciating that we're looking out for the families that might be at risk. If this turns out to be nothing and there's hardly any families that use a garden, I don't know what the harm of that is. If it turns out some families put a garden and get some food where they might not otherwise have a garden, good. Let's help them. I'm relieved that it's got a sunset clause on it. I think we'll learn a lot in this process. I don't want to see the insurance become a barrier to this, but I welcome this discussion, and I don't think it's going to be a big problem. How many families do you guess, Kim, might even put a garden out there? From this many, do you have a sense of?
Yeah, I would say a handful, maybe.
It's hardly anybody.
Yeah, yeah. Because the ideal is to find the optimal place on your land to have a garden, and if it's not a possibility, then a boulevard might be.
Last thing I'll say is, but for the grace of God, there go I. You know, we're fortunate when we have food in our fridge and on our table, and when we're not hit. And if we're not a community with compassion, maybe we should mirror that and reflect on that for a moment.
Any other discussion?
We need to vote on his amendment. We need to vote on that.
Vote on the amendment first. Okay, so the amendment is, Commissioner Greenberg, you want to?
Require a full comprehensive report of the growing season by the first meeting in December.
Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Gary.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Pipcorn.
Nope.
Mahoney.
Aye. Now we'll go to the main motion to approve this policy. Roll call vote, please.
Strand.
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Pipcorn.
Nope.
Mahoney.
Aye. Item 30, State Water Commission request
For approval?
cost reimbursement for the version 479.
Second.
Moved, seconded. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Gary.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Pipcorn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Application for tax exemptions. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Gary.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Pipcorn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Recommendation to approve agreement with the Fargo Municipal Airport Authority to extend the notice of termination date to the memorandum of understanding with Fargo Municipal Airport Authority. Eric Johnson to explain.
Yes, Commissioners.
Mike isn't quite working. Could come to the podium if you want, Eric.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, as the mayor can attest and Commissioner Strand have been involved in conversations along with staff with the airport authority, sort of moving forward with the memorandum of understanding that was entered into between the city and the airport authority in January. And that agreement has sort of a task list in there that's no small list of things to be discussed and gone over together. And I think the leadership in the form of the mayor and the chair of the airport authority were in agreement that a little bit more time might be appropriate to work through some of those items. And so what is before you is a simple amendment, in effect, of the MOU, just to extend a deadline currently set for July 1st of this year by 2 months, with a possible further extension of a third month. The deadline, as the MOU is set up, it was sort of for an initial trial period, you might even say, of 1 year, and the idea that either party could agree that they'll terminate the MOU if notice is given by July 1st. So this idea would be just to extend that notice deadline, again, by up to 3 months. The last month would be, you're just authorizing the mayor, to enter into a written agreement with the chairman of the airport authority to extend it for that third month.
Mr. Greg.
Not understanding why we're extending, this is kind of the trial period, if I'm understanding correctly. And then if no one wants to terminate it, then it's a 3-year automatic extension. So why are we extending the trial period? Did they ask for this? Did we initiate this?
It was really a conversation that the mayor and Commissioner Strand were involved in very recently.
In the negotiations, we were supposed to be working together on a monthly basis and seeing how the arrangement worked. Basically, the first several months that did not happen, so we didn't have that opportunity. There are some areas of discussion that we continue to have this time where they have an idea, we have an idea, those have not been worked out. We believe if we extend this, we can work those things out. Otherwise, it would be that they would want to be not in this MOU. So we want to give this an opportunity to work together. Commissioner Strand?
Well, thank you, Mayor and Commissioner Gehrig. The way I'll say this is we're practicing up on our communications with the airport, and it's stepped up more than it probably has been for years. So there's some wrinkles to work out in our relationship that are just simply that, relationship issues. And my sense is we're really fortunate we have this MOU in place, especially now in what's happened in the world. You know, we're lucky and fortunate that we aren't dealing with a different circumstance at the airport. We have an agreement in place. We have the airport authority in place. We have an agreement to move forward and polish, fine-tune those agreement terms. But we need a little extra time, and we need to keep working positively and constructively together.
Commissioner Gehrig.
And I have no reason to disagree or say otherwise, but nothing in the packet has given me a clear understanding as to why.
We're just extending the initial time window because of the pandemic, and we hadn't quite gotten to our communication levels fast enough. So we're doing that now. We're meeting regularly, our teams of people, but the pandemic didn't help us at all. So I think everybody's in agreement that the extra time window will be beneficial.
And they have to also approve this?
Yes.
Okay. If they approve it, I got no problem with it. I just didn't have a clear understanding.
Can I have a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Gehrig? Mahoney?
Aye. 33, discussion regarding the memorandum pertaining to the retail sale of alcoholic beverages. I think many of us have had emails from different people on this particular issue. Eric Johnson to explain.
Yeah, as was mentioned just a few minutes ago, the resolution was approved at the end of March to create this moratorium on the enforcement of the on-sale restrictions, thus allowing takeout of alcoholic beverages as long as a meal is taken out of restaurants that have liquor licenses. That's already been extended at least once, I believe, and the deadline actually from this most recent extension is tonight at 11:59 p.m. So what's before you is if you don't approve a further extension, it will lapse by its own terms tonight, and you can pick a date. I just as a suggested motion, I picked a date that would be 2 meetings from now, 4 weeks from now, basically, to extend it further.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move the extension.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr.
I
Chairman,
wonder if you should consider just extending it or keeping it as a permanent. The cold virus is going to be here another 6 months, 2 years. So, I mean, if we're doing it for that convenience, I think that sometimes helps. And we've heard from a lot of people they like doing it unless the board wants to do something different, Dave.
So the liquor control meets on Wednesday, and it's on the agenda, and so we'll discuss it. But there's lots of options, and basically it's just doing some fine tuning. And so we're optimistic that we can get something done, but I think it's a changing world, like you said, and so it's a good thing. But we have some fine tuning, I would say, on liquor control that needs to be done. So that's.
Commissioner Gehrig.
Yeah, and I'm on the same page with Dave. It's going to be on the agenda. I'm very hopeful that it'll pass. And we never received any complaints, at least from the police department or anybody else that I'm aware of. People seem to like it. We've had a lot of people reach out to us and say that they appreciate it. It's helping their businesses. If there was a problem, we can address it at liquor control, things like that. So now that liquor control is back, we're meeting again. I think it's a good opportunity for us to talk about it. I'm all for extending it, and hopefully we can extend it for a longer period and at the next meeting and get that done with. So we're not doing it every other meeting.
Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm relieved. Commissioner Pepcorn, I'm glad you're bringing this to your committee to discuss. My recommendation would be to explore making it a permanent policy. See how it goes, talk to the police department, law enforcement, public health, and you have them all at the table anyway. But my sense is there's some real value to this, and we've all heard from lots of different community voices. So have a discussion about extending it or making it a permanent policy.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Desi, you ready for this? COVID-19 update, health update.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'll try to be brief, and I'll actually probably tackle both A and B and hit the task force things as well. And then Mayor, you can add in as you would like to. As far as Health Department, we continue to support COVID activities through our messaging and education, fit testing, PPE guidance on the North Dakota Restart for area businesses, logistics to support testing events in our area. We have the COVID task force activities that we're doing and contact tracing. And then along with continuing to provide our essential services throughout our agency. Cases today in Cass County were 26, bringing our total in Cass to 1173. Deaths were at 33 still. Hospitalizations currently are at 32 across the state, with most of those being in Fargo. All of our health systems today said that admissions have been fairly static over the last week. As far as the Red River Valley Task Force, our purpose of this obviously is to stop the spread of the virus. So what we want to do a number of things. This task force was initiated on May 8th, was our first meeting. We do meet Mondays and Fridays at noon. The first thing that we're trying to develop with this task force is a targeted testing strategy, which of course is focusing our testing on individuals that due to occupation or environment or exposure to a COVID positive individual, they're at increased risk. We also use our epidemiology data to help determine other testing sites. Because we focus our efforts on those who are higher risk, therefore we're likely to find more positive cases, and that's what we want to do, is find those positive cases to identify so we can isolate and quarantine appropriately, and that's what's ultimately going to stop transmission for the virus. So our numbers are going to go up. We expect them to go up. They need to go up before they can come down. The other thing that the task force is supporting is our contact tracing efforts in Cass area as well as Clay. We have added 2 staff from the North Dakota Department of Health that will be joining our team locally, and 2 more will be coming next week. Clay County has started doing contact tracing at the local level. That was done before through the Minnesota Department of Health, so those activities are expanding. We're also looking to clarify some of the messaging that's out there for some of the vulnerable populations and businesses who may not understand, all of the different facets around COVID, the testing, the risk factors, what to do for prevention, what to do for isolation and quarantine. So we're providing those education materials as well. The task force is also looking at what supports are needed for individuals to be in quarantine or isolation. So that is also going to be in part of our strategy moving forward. Is, we have created a budget and provided that to the state, to the governor's office. So we will see, I think we should find out later this week. Our testing strategy that we implemented will be full on board Wednesday starting. They've thrown out the goal of 1,000 tests a day. That's kind of based on lab capacity, and it's based on the percentage that they want to have done in Cass County. Again, we are not so much concerned about the actual number. We may have, 800 one day and 1,200 the next day, but we know that we're getting at the populations that we need to be getting at. So that is the strategy that we have chosen to use in this area. Mayor, anything you would like to add?
Well, I just want the commissioners to know that we have to look at a different parameter, and the parameter is hospital beds that are utilized and death rate. Those are more important than anything else, and we're going to the point that we have capacity at the Fargo Dome. We're going to take down the beds that we have out there because we have not hit our hospital capacity. And I think we have to understand that we're going to test any positives, the contacts around the positive, isolate those people, and keep the basic from spreading in the community. That's what you need to look at, is how we can contain that. Iceland and New Zealand have good models that have worked in that area. So the public might get upset if we go up to 100 or 120 patients that are positive, but the reality is that it would be expected as you go out and test in the community. So I get a lot of calls from people, oh, the numbers are going up. Yep, they might go up because we're testing right now. But if the impact is less, if we're not having as many people go to the hospital, and we have a lot of younger people in the community that are getting this infection, they're just not hitting them the same way as it hits the elderly. So we're going in really hard into the long-term care facilities, protecting those people the best way we can, get people who are positive out of those areas, and that will help us to not have a spread of the disease. And we're hoping as we go along here, it'll drop as we get into June, and that's what you're really looking for. Anticipate it might come back in the fall, but as you saw this afternoon, that there's some hope of a vaccine might be coming along that will change this disease entirely. So what we're really pleased about, the governor has put a task force together locally that we can expedite our strategy and work to that. Dr. Carson is an infectious disease physician at North Dakota State University. He's helping us strategize into what we need to do, and we're completely coordinated with the state. The Guard's mission has helped us do testing, so you may see Guard in the community, 50 to 100 Guard will be around helping us out, and they'll help us get the testing that we need to do done. We may transition that as we go along. And the other thing is that the state government is planning wraparound services to help families that are affected by this to still maintain their rent, their food, their ability to have a wage. So there's a lot of money that the state is actually putting into this, but I'm very pleased that they're looking to this county and this city to help us out. I'm pleased with how that is going. I think Desi and I have had good discussions on statewide level, and we seem to have a better understanding. Rather than have Bismarck say we're to test here, we're deciding where we test locally. And just to manufacturers, if you're concerned about what's going on in your site or worried about having it in your site, we do have Leon is going into those sites and doing testing in manufacturer areas. But I've talked to a couple manufacturers, and I'm very pleased. A lot of them are doing the right thing. They do the cleaning, they do the masks, they do the temperatures, they do the things they need to do. And one company had 10 positive cases, and they had 40 people sequestered in his company, so they knew what to do. They're doing a great job. So that, I'll move on to Commissioner, Desi. Any questions of Desi? Everybody okay? Okay, Commissioner Grinberg talking about the CARES Emergency Fund Relief update.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to defer to Nicole. She started with our amendment to the 2019 CDBG plan. I would just say that she's coming up, that things are moving along with our discussions with the nonprofits. The gaps are being identified. There doesn't appear to be overlap in process, and there's been a lot of effort in the nonprofit area to support people, and the CDBG is the next step forward for us, and Nicole has a memo in our packet, and I'll turn it over to her.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Grinberg. And on the heels of Desi and Mayor and the Red River response team, like that just got in place in the last 2 weeks, and prior to that, we were already working with our community development block grant dollars to try to figure out where the need was in our community, and had partnered with started asking discussions through our partners with CDBG, First Link in particular. We know they're the key in helping us with a hotline and people that have questions, communication questions. For instance, in the disaster with the floods, we rely heavily on the First Link flood hotline number. So going back to those resources. And so in talking with them and the duration of COVID, we're recognizing that they could use an extra person to help with PM, evening shift calls, overnight shift calls. And so that's item 1 in your agenda request. We're looking for that position to cost about $40,000. We suggest that the state reimburse that through the program and budget that Desi was just talking about that. In the event that they were not to follow through with that, we would go to CDBG as a resource to cover those expenses. Likewise, we, through community development work and through United Way, we had been working with communities in direct translation services, clear messaging, and education support and workforce development. And so going back to those groups, because they started calling us right away with the immediate response on COVID, on the needs in their communities and what they're seeing. So many of them are already doing this work, and we would like to start to reimburse them for those costs that they're doing and providing direct assistance. And we do have a budget with them in United Way, and using the United Way as that fiscal agent to help us connect the dots with all the nonprofit groups that are working in this community. And so we have an estimated cost of $160,000. We have included that in Desi's budget for the state. And at this point, it we'll hear later in this week of support with that. And then lastly, I was just in front of you earlier with the the housing assistance program and the $464,000. And so with this, items 1 and 2, as I was talking to Bruce Grubb and Mayor on the, and Kent Costin on the finance policies, normally I would take these as, you know, kind of sole source to the finance committee first under purchase policy and then come here in order to expedite some things and start getting First Link going, since they are receiving up to 80 extra calls a week. And since Ashara is already doing this work with United Way, we'd like to start reimbursing those and get those executed contracts. And so so I do have a recommendation for you for a motion to authorize finalizing these partnerships for these programs by executing recipient agreements subject to CDBG regulation and legal review. So we would go through the contract reviews with Eric like we normally do, and we would go through those next steps like we normally do with developing contracts and agreements, and we would follow CDBG rules as part of that.
We have a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. Nicole, I'm just curious, with this rental assistance bridge, does that affect or help people being evicted?
I don't believe so. I think that's another, I think what we're hearing from our local action network, so Seneca and Lakes and Prairies, just a quick 101 on community development block grant dollars and social services. Those are getting the direct calls for people in emergency housing crisis. And what we're hearing is about 50% of those applications are making it way through the rental bridge assistance program. So we're capturing 50% of that. I think we need to follow back up with some other programs in community development block grant.
My thinking is if we as a commission passed an advisory asking our community to show some restraint and compassion with evictions, but I'm hearing they're happening. And the Supreme Court has lifted the restriction on eviction, so they can go before the courts now. I just hope the landlords and the developers and the owners of properties who have tenants at risk, that they put on the brakes and try hold off on evictions. As you say in this memo, this program is slowly being rolled out. We need time. And if there might be some assistance for folks that need this as opposed to eviction, because eviction's not a good answer. It just gives you other problems in other arenas to address, and it's just, so I hope we can connect these dots and to rental assistance and evictions and stave off evictions.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? Roll call vote.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Garrick.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. We had one other comment, Commissioner Grinberg or Strand. The unions want to say something, or somebody?
Yes, Mayor. We have 3 representatives of the labor unions here, and one of them, Eric, will be, I think, has some comments to share with the commission. I know we've all heard from these folks too about their concerns about workforce safety and workplace safety, I believe, but is it Eric?
Yes, Eric Brecky. I've been in the community for 48 years. I'm a representative of the Northern Plains United Labor Council. I'm also an electrician, so I do work in the field and with these people. We fully understand the concept of the North Dakota Smart Restart, but what we're saying is there's got to be a safety first implemented in this, because the people that are out there working need those safety securities. Majority of people are doing good in these job sites, but we're asking the city council or commission and mayor to respectfully ask you to adopt following 8 principles for reopening our economy safely and safe. One is the workers must have a say in these decisions in every level of workplace, in the industry, city, state, and federal levels. Decisions must be based on worker safety and sound science. Strong and clear enforceable workplace health and safety standards must be in place. Workers must have a strong protection against retaliation. There must be a massive increase in adequate levels of types of personal protective equipment for workers currently on the job and those returning to work. There must be The federal government must oversee a system of reporting and tracking worker infection. Employees in coordination with local and state public health departments must trace the contact of infected workers and removal of exposed workers from work with pay and without retaliation. We're finding those that are going to work, that want to go to work, sometimes don't have those safety measures put in place that the governor set as a standard. And we're asking that the commissioner and the mayor put these in an enforceable policy and standards in place so that these people can go to work and feel safe at going to work. And that's our request here today.
Thank you. I would assume the commissioner has not seen a written document, would not act on this today, but it could be taken in advisement. Commissioner Strand?
Mayor, I would suggest maybe you and your task force address these topics, perhaps.
Sure.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that would be my sentiment as well, as we do compare the two, the governors and what's been presented here tonight, and then interface that with, what's in our regular scope of business as a city based on the state and have public health involved. So I would agree.
Very good. No motion tonight, is that right? No. We do take safety of the workers very seriously and don't want them in harm's way. I see Barry wearing his mask today. My police officer wearing the mask. You guys are wearing yours as well. And we have to remind people that that's really part of protection. As far as a worker, if they're positive, if they wear a mask, it will not spread to the client. So when people are out eating, it's really important that those things are honored. Same time, they have to be safe in their environment. And we know in closed spaces, people can be, if they have the proper equipment, not get the virus. So it's fairly important that that happens. I come from the health field area, and everybody has masks everywhere I am at, and there's adequate equipment around for everybody to wear. So it's very important to do that. Any other business of the commission tonight? Move to adjourn?
I so move.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.